seen either.
Welcome back to Squawk Talk. I'm here with the midweek episode with Christian, who's always by my side. We got a good amount to talk about. We have an absolutely fantastic series on our hands. We were 1-1 at this episode, 2 weeks ago when we were playing the Knicks. But I think there's a little bit different feeling this time around. We're not playing the Knicks. I think we were both pretty comfortable with where we were when we were playing the Knicks, and we saw how that turned out. But this series has been much different. It's been a game of absolute haymakers. Two teams that can play good defense, can play good offense, are capable of going on runs, and that's what we've seen. I think the biggest thing that before we even get into the game one analysis, because when we were doing this analysis for this series, we were talking about without Joel Embiid. Well, they're definitely with Joel Embiid. I mean, this is I had someone say like, "Oh, imagine if he was 100%." I'm like, I mean, what could it get better? Like, could it get better?
Right.
I mean, he set back-to-back career highs in playoff games: 39 points game one, 40 points game two. But let's start with that game one. The Hawks were able to jump out to a 20. What did it get up to? A 25, 26 point lead or something ridiculous in that first half. I was sitting there at Taco Mac enjoying a few beers. And I mean, I was in shock because not only were they doing this, they were doing this while Joel Embiid was playing very, very well. And the Hawks just had it clicking. They tried to put Danny Green on Trae Young. He had 25 and 7 at half. I was talking my ish, and everyone was making shots. Kevin Huerter was coming off the bench. He's been a star this series. Danilo Gallinari's played well in both games. But that just give me your thoughts on that first game, Christian. Before we get into game two.
Yeah, I thought game one was a lot of the same that we saw in the New York series where, Trae Young was able to get downhill out of pick and roll. He was able to find his spots. He was hitting his threes. He went 4 for 7, just in the first half from the 3-point line, Trae Young did. So I really thought that he was incredibly impressive. He didn't drop off at all. Philly crowd was definitely hostile. It wasn't, near as wild as it was in the Garden. But he definitely, thrived in that scenario, in that situation with the fans. So I thought he looked great coming out. Bogdanovich, going 4 for 5 from the field in the first half, hitting 3 threes. I mean, he's just continuing to be, that guy. I read a really great feature on him by The Ringer that they did. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. Bogdanovich is just he's different, and I think he showed that a lot early in the game. I thought everybody on the Hawks in the rotation in the first half and overall in the game, I think in game one, played really well. Probably the biggest moment of that game that I took away was I noticed that Nate McMillan went back to his full bench lineup, and I immediately jumped on the Bird app and got a little bit on him for it, saying, I thought we learned our lesson in the first game or in game 2 of the Knicks series, and sure enough, they go on a quick 17-0 run. I thought, those guys looked really, really good. Kevin Huerter specifically, you put out a good piece on him today. Kevin Huerter has been phenomenal in both games, but even in that game, coming in and kind of taking control, being the calming hand when the Hawks were in control throughout the whole first quarter, but there was a stretch where the starters, just kind of kept it even. Joel Embiid's a hard guy to play with, so you got to win those minutes without. And that's what the Hawks did in game one. Joel Embiid was plus. Let's see, he was plus overall in that game. A 13, lot. There you go. Plus 13 in a game that they end up getting beat by 4. So obviously that tells you all you need to know about, the minutes without him. So we said it beforehand. It all comes down to Joel Embiid's health is how we kind of felt coming into it and how competitive a series this can be. And man, does that guy look healthy? And I thought he crushed. The Hawks crushed. And it was a fun game in game one. And Hawks should feel confident, going into game 2 up 1-0.
Yeah, it's hard to really find a spot where anybody played bad on the Hawks. I guess the only person I would say you hope to get a little bit more out of based off their game 1 performance is Capella.
Right.
I mean, it's not like he was bad. He had 11 and 10, but defensively, I mean, there's just no stopping that guy one-on-one. And this is what we say about Trae Young. There's just not a guy in the league that's you can slow him down. You can throw different looks at him, which Philly did a very good job of, especially in the first half of game 2. And it threw them off, and that's why they were able to start so hot. But guys like Joel Embiid, I mean, there's no stopping him. I mean, because he's so big. I mean, Capella's not a small guy. I mean, that's a 7'1", 240-pound man, 250-pound man, and Embiid is just so much bigger than him. It's just he makes him look like a wing out there. So I mean, that guy's just a freak of nature. He's a modern day Shaq, and he can shoot. So it's like it's unstoppable. You can't stop a guy like that when he's going like he did in games 1 and 2, which is why it's impressive that the Hawks were able to pull out a win. And it's because everyone in game 1 played great. I mean, you look at Bogey, he was knocking down threes. Herter, 15 points. John Collins, who we're going to talk about needing to do a little bit more, but I mean, it's pretty clear he's probably the X factor offensively for this team in the series. He gets totally shut down in game 2, but game 1, it's almost like we forgot he went 7 for 9 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3, had 21 points, 4 rebounds in 34 minutes. So, if he does that, the Hawks are going to be in good shape. And I think the craziest thing about all of this is we're doing it without DeAndre Hunter. Like, if you had told me we were going to split without DeAndre Hunter in the lineup, I would have been like, and Joel Embiid went off for 39 and 40, I would have said, you're on crack. I would have said, there's no way we win one of those games. But it just shows you how much this Hawks teams come, how much depth. I mean, I think someone commented on one of our last videos. I don't know if you ever read the YouTube comments, but we get some Philly fans that get on these videos and comment. And someone commented, do you really think the Hawks are deeper, like LOL, than the Sixers? And I was like, oh, I don't think it. I'm absolutely positive of it. And I think they should. If there was one thing that we learned in games 1 and 2, whether we won or we lost, is there's a much deeper team, and it's the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, outside, of course, of known killer Shake Milton.
Which is just, we'll get into that, but oh my God. I mean, just talk about that.
No, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think, you said it, you hit a couple different points there in the series so far. Obviously, the health factor for both teams being a big thing right now with DeAndre Hunter being out. But, wanting to get into the bench, stay on topic. Gallo, man, good for him getting out here and, in games 1 and game 2. He came out and he's had a really good stretch in game 2 specifically. I mean, he was one of the main reasons that the Hawks, stayed around as much as they did. When he's making shots and when he's able to get to his spots and hit those open looks that he does get, because Trae Young, if nothing else, he'll get you open looks. And when Gallo's, hitting it like that, when Bogdanovic is hitting it well, the Hawks are a hard team to stop. I thought, going back to Collins a little bit there, he had a phenomenal game 1. He had 8 points in game 2, kind of faded, stayed to the wayside, 4 of 11 from the field overall. I put out a little thing today about Collins and his production, or kind of like rather lack of points wise. He's still a monster, everywhere else on the court. He's active off the ball defensively. He does a pretty decent job, dealing with post ups, guarding on the perimeter, outside, of course, of Joel Embiid, which again, like you said, there's nothing you can do with him no matter who you are. So, Collins, I would like to see a little more from him, from aggression standpoint. Hawks need someone to step up outside of Trae and Bogdanovic on a nightly basis. And it was Gallo in the last game. Now they didn't have enough going down the stretch, and Kevin Huerter, of course, more than anybody. But I think Collins, definitely has an opportunity to further cement himself, because a lot of people would have gone in the year and considered John Collins the second best player on the team. And he's been really, really good. And I think it's more a testament to how good the other guys have been, as instead of it being a knock on him. But John definitely is a big key to moving forward. If he can play like he did in game 1 and put this game 2 behind him, then there's not a lot you can do with Atlanta. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just it's really interesting how both teams have come out and shot the ball hot. Philly's gone on a little bit more of a sustained run here through the end of the second half and all the way through second game 2. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's it's been interesting to see whose shots are falling when.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder. I feel like it's kind of a tough matchup for Collins as far as like trying to get him involved in like one-on-ones like scenarios. Yeah. Like we don't post Collins up all the time, but they definitely posted him up a lot more under McMillan. But the kind of length that Philly has, especially in the post, I feel like maybe that's why they haven't really gone to that. Maybe that's why you do see him kind of relying on Trae to either get him an alley-oop or Trae to get him a three-point shot. I think he is kind of becoming more of a secondary player. And maybe that affects his contract, maybe it doesn't. But I do think if the Hawks are going to win this series, they need a lot more out of him. But I just want to give we talked about Bogey a little bit. I want to give him some love because that guy just has straight ice in his veins. I mean, some of the shots that he hits when, the Philly crowd is screaming down on him, they got a good run going. And those are just how you stay in the game on the road. And a number of the Hawks did it. But Bogey hits tough shots when the Hawks need him all the time. And yes, he may shoot 7 of 17 or he may shoot 7 of 20. But the difficulty of shots that he's taking a lot of the times are when the Hawks desperately need a basket and he's breaking this run breaking the crowd down, silencing it. And he's done it several times in this series. He did a bunch against the Knicks. I know his shooting percentages aren't nearly as high in the playoffs as they are in the regular season, but the importance of the buckets that he hits it just can't even be put into words. You can't measure that on a stat sheet.
Definitely. You look at Bogdanovic going into that big shot where, of course, he ended up pulling the tray and hushing everybody. He was 0 for 5 from 3 heading into that. And on probably the biggest possession of the night offensively, Kevin Huerter somehow, gets away from a trap, does a great job of getting a tough pass to Bogey. It didn't even hit him in the shooting pocket. I mean, he had to pick the ball up. He had to get a crazy shot up, and he's 0 for 5 from 3, not even feeling it, and he still hits it. He's just built different from that perspective.
Yeah, he's got ice absolutely in his veins. But I don't want to spend too much time on the first game because we kind of know what happened. I think we got out to a huge run. We floundered miserably in the fourth quarter. But I think there was a lot more to take away from this second game. And that I kind of look at it in two ways. One, you watch Philly play that good and you're like, damn, that's a really good team. That's going to be a tough team to beat over a 7-game series. But then I look at it and I'm like, dude, the Hawks played so bad at certain portions of this game. And the resiliency they showed. I mean, in my 25 years of watching the Hawks, there's not a single team that would have ever not gotten beat by like 40 last night. I mean, there's no way any Hawks team that I've ever seen up to this point would have been able to have a chance to win in the fourth quarter. I mean, if Shake Milton doesn't come out there and make 15 points, in a row, the Hawks might actually go out there and win that game, which just would have been unheard of. So when I say this Hawks team's different, that's what I mean, because that's Philadelphia to me. I mean, they only turned the ball over 6 times. They were making, let's just go through like their 3-pointers. I mean, Steph Curry 5 of 6, Shake Milton 4 of 5, and Embiid 2 of 5. I mean, the only guy who could really miss was Danny Green, who talk about a brick house in the postseason. I mean, I don't know what happened to that man. He's just turned into a total brick house.
Set the record for threes in a postseason and hasn't hit one since, it feels like.
I mean, you're going into a must-win game on the road.
Yeah.
So the atmosphere was electric in Philly last night. They make 46% of their threes. Joel Embiid drops 40. You fall behind 20-4, and you still have a chance to win in the fourth quarter, or at least going into the fourth quarter. I mean, that gets me excited. I mean, that's what gets me excited, because I think Philly played pretty much a perfect game, and they only turned the ball over 7 times. I mean, that's a pretty much perfect game at home, and it was a close game until the very end. And I think the Hawks played a very bad, I think they played maybe their C game, and they had a chance to win it. So I think it just shows you the amount of firepower this team has, because on any given night, like we've said, someone can give you 20, 25 that you don't expect it. And we had Gallinari and Huerter do it for us last night. If Trey doesn't play terribly, I mean, we could win that game. If John Collins doesn't give us 8 points, we could win that game. So I think it just tells you like the depth on this team is unbelievable. And that's what could carry us through this series.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of kind of what we went through in the last series in game 1 as well. A lot of percentage issues, a lot of shot making issues for the Hawks in game 2 down the stretch. Yeah, guys missing shots that they otherwise would make. Trey Young, even at one point, was about as open as you could possibly be in the NBA. Just didn't hit it. Yeah, guys off, and it's going to happen. And you end up losing the game because of it. You can move on, go from that. I thought the Hawks did a good job of generating good looks. And I think over the course of a series, especially when you already have game 1 in your back pocket, I think from a fan's perspective, from an observer's perspective, you should still be encouraged by game 2, because, again, they did generate good looks. Guys had open shots. Bogdanovic went 6 for 16 from the floor. Trey Young went 6 for 16 from the floor. And they weren't necessarily being forced into taking bad shots. They just didn't hit them. And that's not going to continue. You also look at the bench. Kevin Huerter, like we talked about, 20 points, 8 for 10 from the field. I mean, what a stud. He's made himself a ton of money. However, he does come out and he has 4 turnovers. Lou Williams has 3 turnovers in just 15 minutes. Trey Young with 4. 17 total turnovers. Interestingly enough, I noticed this today when I was going through the stuff. Philadelphia ends up with 16 points off turnovers, and they obviously end up winning the game by 16. That's not the whole story, but it's a lot of it. I thought the Hawks got a little sloppy with the ball every once in a while, and I don't see that repeating itself. Trey Young did definitely look flustered by Philadelphia's change of pace, change of look, putting Ben Simmons a lot on him. They were face guarding him off the ball a lot, even just straight up denying him to get back involved in the action after he passed the ball the first time. Hawks come out with a game plan, and when you're playing at home, you got that crowd behind you. I think some more of those shots will go in. And, they just have to hope that Joel Embiid doesn't score 150 points next game, because at this point, I almost think that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, the guy goes 40 and 13, and just he's not even just doing it down low. He's doing it with fadeaways. He was making long 2-pointers off the dribble. He was making a ton of threes. I mean, I only went 2 for 5. It felt a lot worse than that. But anytime he's making any of his threes, they're like gut punches because you can't really guard him out there because if you do, he's just going to get to the rim with ease. But talk about an absolute talent. One thing that you talked about. Trae Young, the way that they guarded him with Ben Simmons and they trapped him a lot off screens and really put some pressure on him. Do you think that's something that will continue? Because my personal view is I think Young's the type of player. I still think he's unguardable with one person. I know they're going to trap him off screens and try to put pressure on him. But I think that's something he's going to be able to adjust to. And I also think that's something that works a lot better at home than it does on the road. I mean, you hear the fans screaming like when that's going in your direction. I think that's something that Trae Young's going to be able to figure out throughout the series. But if he doesn't, if he can't, that's a problem. And I don't know how the Hawks can win this series without it.
Sure, definitely. I think it's absolutely cause for concern for Hawks fans, for anybody observing the team that's got a rooting interest. Trae Young did struggle, against the trap. He did struggle against Ben Simmons face guarding him. They put a lot more pressure on him. But like you said, he's a smart basketball player. He's a stud. If I believe in anybody in the NBA and their ability to adjust and, be a smart basketball player and make high IQ plays, it's going to be Young. He's got good playmakers around him. I think a lot of the issues that came up when the Hawks had the lineups out there that include Solomon Hill. Solomon Hill has been very good for the Hawks this year compared to what they thought they were going to get out of him. That does not mean that Solomon Hill needs to be starting in the playoffs for the Hawks. The loss of DeAndre Hunter is bigger than anything. And, we'll see if Nate McMillan makes a change. But Solomon Hill being out there being guarded by Curry, and now you really have one other creator next to Young. It makes it a lot easier to trap. It makes it a lot easier to pressure Young when the only other person you have to worry about creating offense is going to be Bogdanovich. So the Hawks are essentially running two creators with a roller in Capella, with a roller spot up shooter in Collins, and just a spot up shooter in Hill, who frankly doesn't hit 3-point shots at a high enough rate to be in that role. It's just tough. And he's giving you something defensively, I guess. I think I'd prefer to see, somebody else in that role. Again, love Solo. Think he's a great dude. Think he's done a lot for the Hawks, but it's going to be tough, when Philly can double Trae Young without any threat of the third guy coming to making a play.
Yeah, I think Solo in the regular season definitely gave us more than we expected. And as a leader in the locker room, I think he's been excellent. I think everyone on that team will tell you that. And then you saw the video of him checking. I think it was it Randall or Nerlens Noel or whoever?
Noel, yeah.
Noel going into halftime. So he's kind of like that old man, enforcer of the Hawks. And I think you need that on teams. And obviously he was on the Heat last year. So he's been here before. He gets it. But as far as his on-the-court production, I don't need to see him on the court the rest of the series. It's that frank. I mean, it's just he doesn't bring anything offensively, which allows you to, like you said, coming on to have a guy like Seth Curry just hide in the corner, kind of like with Trae Young. He doesn't really bring much defensively. We're not talking about like a Matisse Thybulle where this guy's not an elite defender. He can hold his own, but frankly, I didn't watch enough of him, just one-on-one defensively.
Yeah.
But if he's sitting there on, I don't know who he was on. Was he on Tobias Harris? I mean,
Tobias Harris. Yeah.
Yeah. Harris was eating his lunch. So it wasn't like he was having a lot of success. I know you said after the game, Nate McMillan was talking about it and he wants Kevin Huerter off the bench, which I understand, but I think you've got to see some of Tony Snell, at least a guy who's a sniper. We know Tony Snell can knock down open shots to where, you can't just run traps at him all game or run traps at Trae Young so they can leave Solomon Hill open. So I definitely think that's something we'll see. I don't need to see Hill on the floor anymore. We'll see if he's in the starting lineup. Let's cross our fingers that DeAndre Hunter's back. Because if DeAndre Hunter's back, I think we can win this series, even with Joel Embiid. I think we've shown enough. And I wonder if us winning game one kind of gave us that cushion to give him an extra day of rest. I mean, I hope that's the case. You hope that maybe they were like, let's give him those extra, because now we have 2 days off. So he gets 4 whole days off, basically. He hasn't played since what? I mean, it's been over a week now since game 5. So, he gets a bunch of extra days rest. Let's just hope that he's ready to go, because if he is, I think that's game changing. I think He can guard Harris. I think he can help with the traps on Embiid. I think he just does so much different. But let's moving forward in the series. How do you think the Hawks are going to be able to defend Embiid? Because obviously Capella by himself isn't enough. So do they just keep trying to leave Capella on an island and just say, hey, we're not going to let guys because when we tried to double him, Seth Curry was getting wide open, 3-point galore. So do you just try to, leave him one-on-one and say, hey, Capella, let's let him get his 36, let him, right, but try to make him work as hard as he possibly can for that 36 points. And maybe if you have a Matisse Thybulle and you're on the right side, you double him those scenarios. Because I can't see Seth Curry shoot another wide open three. They're just money. It's every time. Every time I saw that, you knew it was going in. You're just right. Face palm, So that's obviously not the strategy. Maybe you leave Danny Green open. I mean, that guy can't shoot. I mean, and it's obviously in his head at this point. So, yeah. I mean, I do think there are some scenarios where you can double them, but do you try to, I mean, you saw him go to zone at sometimes. I mean, what can you do? I'm almost at the point where I think you just try to let him get his and then just don't let the other guys beat you.
Yeah, I think you kind of said it. I think right now the Hawks' best strategy is to pray. It really is tough. I mean, he's that good. I think, the unfortunate part, I said it, we talked about the preview before the podcast. Clint Capella is a phenomenal center. He's really good at a lot of things. However, he's not built like some guys who are worse than him as well to guard Joel Embiid. He doesn't have the same thickness, the same lower body strength that some other centers in the league may have. I think you definitely can, live with Embiid just averaging 40. They did it in game one. The Hawks won, and he did that. I mean, you just don't let guys hit open threes, like you mentioned. You can double him. Something interesting that I noticed a lot of times they were putting Embiid in, that the high post by the elbow kind of situations, and they would put Ben Simmons down in the opposite dunker spot right there on the block, and then they put Thybulle out in the corner. So now Trey's guarding on the weak side. Now Trey's guarding Thybulle. So where if you bring the help, typically you would bring the help from where John Collins is guarding Simmons. If Collins comes up and tries to double, and then they get situations where, Trae Young, through the ways that they have to rotate and help when they're doubling Embiid, he ends up being guarding Simmons underneath, and obviously that's not going to go great. You don't want that from Atlanta. So I think a lot of it has to do with just kind of letting Joel get his, not letting him get easy shots. The guy is a big guy. He clearly is dealing with some injury, and allowing him to get easy dunks and get to the lane is a recipe for disaster. I think you try to force him to shoot outside. It's not easy. He still can move you around even if you are playing off. But one way or another, the Hawks are going to have to – the Sixers are going to score somehow, and it's probably a lot better off having it be in Joel Embiid post-ups and long twos than it is Seth Curry going 4 for 5 from deep. So I think you're right on the money with that, because I don't want to watch that guy make any threes anymore either. That would definitely be something that the Hawks should keep an eye on. So we'll see if the Sixers make adjustments, give them more. The Hawks make some adjustments as well. I thought Gallinari did a little bit better job on Capella than even Clint, or did a better job on Embiid than even Capella did.
He was
He's
at least
a big, strong boy. Yeah, I mean,
he was at least a pest. He was getting under his skin, and
I
mean, who knows? Maybe you can get. I mean, I'm not hoping for an ejection, but you get under him skin, you get him rattled. I mean, that definitely had him rattled, and it made a difference at the end of the half there. I mean, the Hawks went on a run to cut it to 2. And I think it definitely gave him some energy. If they do that on the road, that'll light up the crowd. So I definitely think that's something we could see. I think we could see Gallo on him a little. And, it's really, I agree with you on the Capella thing, because I think the thing with Embiid is it's really not about, he's so skilled, and he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. He's a good shooter from, 15 feet, 20 feet. He's got a great game. But it's really taking away the 8 foot and in, those little jump shots and those dunks and those easy layups. And I don't know if Capella can do that because of his, his slider size. But a guy like Gallinari, while he could take that away. So at least forcing him into taking those 14, 15 footers, those jump shots from 3, those jump shots for 20 feet. So I think that really is an interesting thing that you bring up. I mean, just putting a bigger body on him, so at least he can't get bullied down low. And Gallinari is obviously a veteran, so if you try to bully him down low, he might be able to draw an offensive foul. We saw him do that. So I think that's an interesting thing you bring up. You don't think of Gallinari being maybe the best option the Hawks have.
No.
But when you have Joel Embiid, you're really with so much pick your poison that it's if you can get him to settling and taking 12 feet and out jumpers, you're winning. And if he makes all of them, good for him. And he's going to make a good amount of them. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, the guy's incredibly skilled, but it's the easy buckets around the basket. It's the dunks. It's the like getting 5 feet away and just letting him fade away. Like he's going to make those all day. So I think that's a good point. Especially if you're not going to try to double him, which I think killed the Hawks at times because he's a good passer. But yeah, it's really pick your poison, and he's a fantastic player, and that's why we said it's all about the health of him in this series, because you're seeing, he's putting the team on his back. He is that type of player, and I think that's why Philly fans were getting upset when I said this or something like that. It's like I'm not really even sliding on the 76ers as a team with Joel Embiid. I mean, they're great. They're a great team. I picked the Philadelphia 76ers in 7, and that takes a lot for me to do.
Right, absolutely.
So I picked him with Joel Embiid. So it's not that I don't think they're a good team. I just think he is arguably he's a top 5 player in the league, and he's unstoppable offensively. And they run their whole offense through him. And if you still to this point in the series think Ben Simmons could have carried this team, you're just on crack. The guy had 4 points, and I give credit. He did do a good job, especially in that first half on Trae Young. But the guy offensively is a 0. I mean, he does he can have a couple assists here and there. He'll make a good pass, but if you ask him to carry the load, it's not happening. So I think I don't know how people haven't already realized Ben Simmons been doing this in the playoffs for 4 years, but he doesn't really show up. He does the little things. He's a good role player. But the number 2 on this team is Tobias Harris, and he's been great this series too. So I think the best part about the outlook of this series is we've watched guys, their best players play really well, and even Seth Curry has averaged like 20 points, I think, this series. And the Hawks, they're up tied 1-1, and they had a chance to go up 2-0 on the road. And you look ahead, we're at home, 21-2 at home, and I know a game like last kind of has you feeling a little worried because they're up 20, but home court advantage in the NBA is just something else, especially in the playoffs. I was watching that Jazz games last night. I don't know if you watched that game, but it was an absolute beauty. And just seeing those fans in the stadium, it was unfreaking real. Just the electricity. And that Suns game the other day against the Nuggets. Just having these fans back in the arena, it's just a totally different ball game. And I know I'm going to be at game 4, so hopefully we're up 2-1. But I know that place is going to be absolutely rocking at State Farm, and I'm pretty hopeful. I'm pretty hopeful that we can win both of these games.
Yeah, obviously, exact same situation as the Hawks Knicks series, 1-1 split after a bad feeling in game 2 that left you feeling a little negative. If you were a little bit of a pessimist for the Hawks in that series, obviously coming back, completely different story. Joel Embiid is a superstar, whereas Julius Randle was a very normal player posing as one. And it's going to be tough to come back home and get a couple wins. Although again, you're at home, you're in front of the home fans, and that gives you a big boost. Again, we talked about shooting, and in game 2, that was a big boon for the Hawks. They didn't hit the shots at the same clip that they would have liked to. You're back in State Farm, and you got the whole crowd behind you. There's a pretty good chance your shooting numbers are gonna improve. You're not gonna have the same amount of turnovers. When they're full court pressing you, you don't have a million people yelling at you. They're yelling for you, and I do think that does come into play. I do think the Hawks got a little flustered. They got a little flustered down the stretch in game 1, and I think they definitely came out the gates in game 2 still reeling from the end of that first game. Philadelphia kind of still controlled all the momentum despite having a loss. So I think it's definitely going to be big. Like you said, the NBA is a home court league. Every sport, home field, home court definitely makes a difference. But the NBA absolutely, in front of that crowd, you're talking about momentum. You're talking about a league where one night on the same exact looks, a guy will go 0 for 7 for 3, and then the next day go 11 for 12. It's streaky. It's momentum. There's a lot of mental stuff involved in this game, and it's definitely a lot easier in front of the home crowd. So it's gonna be big. Again, 1-1 coming back to Atlanta. You got to feel about as confident as you can.
No, I can't tell you how many games during these playoffs I've watched where you can just feel it. It's palpable. It's right there, especially the Hawks. In game 2 against the Knicks and game 2 against the Sixers. And, when they started blowing game 1 against the Sixers, you can feel the crowd just raining down, and you're watching the team and they're clearly flustered by it. It's clear as day. And, I think you'll see that from the 76ers when they're playing at State Farm. It's definitely much different. You're talking about a team that didn't have had their bench scores like 10 points going into until Shake Milton went off and the whole series. So I mean, I think they're going to have a tough time playing on the road. It's not going to get any easier. I don't think we're going to see Shake Milton dropping 4 of 5 threes in a row. And I do think the Hawks, who didn't really shoot it well in Game 2, will definitely come back. And I'm excited about this, and I guess let's end with like we always end, some predictions. Now that we're 1-1, we've seen kind of what happened. We know now we have a healthy Embiid, so we can't use that as an excuse, as a cop out. You're gonna have to say it straight up to my face if you think the Hawks are gonna lose. So what do you got going back game 3? Do you think we take home Game 3, and what do you think happens in the series?
Yeah, I think the Hawks are going to come out. I think a lot of it comes down to, of course, I can still use a cop-out, Chase, so I'm going to go with the health of DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah, you can. That is true. True.
But being serious, I think, with the information we have now, similar, and I was very wrong about Embiid, obviously, but similar to how I felt before the Hawks series, with Embiid, I'm pretty pessimistic. I'm a little worried about DeAndre Hunter's realistic chances of coming back. I haven't loved the comments coming out of the front office and Travis Schlenk in regards to his health and how he's progressing, or in this case not. But either way, I think my initial prediction was Sixers in 6 if Joel Embiid was healthy. I feel less confident in it now. I feel like the Hawks can push this to 7 after seeing, the offensive prowess of this team really take over in Game 1. And honestly, the Hawks played pretty good offense through 3 quarters yesterday. It was really just the fourth quarter, just kind of they fell apart. Frankly, they couldn't hit anything. So I would say I would still stick by Sixers in 6. Unfortunately, I think the Hawks will go 1, maybe 2 back here at home, but then I do think Philly takes care of business in Game 5. And I hate for it to end in State Farm, and I definitely think that that the Sixers are the better basketball team as currently constructed. If DeAndre Hunter comes back, I'll flip that to the Hawks in the same amount of games. I think he's that big of a difference maker. But I think this game ends up 4-2 one way or another, and a lot of it's going to have to do with DeAndre. Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to imagine that we will beat the 76ers in a series where we're starting Solomon Hill. I can tell you that.
Definitely, yeah.
So, I mean, the difference between Solomon Hill and DeAndre Hunter is, 15 points a game and better defense. So, I mean, you're not talking about something small. I'm gonna go ahead and say, I mean, it's really going to come down. Atlanta has to win these 2 games if they want to win the series.
Definitely.
It's really these 2 games that they have to win. They have to take care of business at home and get a 3-1 lead, and then they're gonna have to. I think they're gonna have to hold on for dear life. I don't think it'll come easy after that. It's not going to be like the Knicks. They got to win these 2 games and then hold on for dear life and win one of those next 3. And I think it's going to be hard for them to win another game in Philly. So really, you're looking at games. They got 3 chances at home, and they got to go 3-0. Yep. And the reality of that is pretty difficult. I don't see them sweeping 3-0 as good as they've been at home, as good as they've shown us. But with Solomon Hill, I do think they can win 2. So I'm going to stick with Philly in 7. I definitely think they can win 2. But just the way Embiid's playing, it's hard to imagine him not, because they can slow it down, run it through him. It's hard to imagine he can't take over at least one game on the road, being the superstar that he is, and not win one at State Farm. Because the way that we played it in Philly yesterday, even though we were able to punch back, it just seemed like you could see the youth spilling out of our veins. Like you could just see there were times, even at the end of the first game, they would get flustered, and they showed it in Madison Square Garden Game 2. There's just too many times where they do that, and I don't see them beating a great team like Philly with Embiid healthy like this in Philly again. So they're gonna have to go 3-0 at home, and unfortunately, as much as I want to predict that they will, I will say that they will lose in 7 games. And I will be very upset, but whatever happens, if they win or lose, we'll be here to talk about it, wrap up the end of the season, or talk about the next round. Hopefully we're talking about the next round, but I mean, it's been fun as hell, man. It really has been fun as hell to watch this team. The future is obviously very bright. There's nothing like we said, after we beat the Knicks, this is icing on the cake. If we beat the Sixers and move this forward, I mean, obviously we're much further ahead than we thought, but this has been fun. It's been a fun run, and I think we have a real shot. But
definitely,
you got to give the edge to the more experienced 76ers team with a guy like Joel Embiid, who is going to give you 30 to 40 every night, no matter what.
Yeah. Good news is the Hawks have a superstar of their own, and we'll see him be able to step up his game down the stretch. He had a really phenomenal game one. He didn't play great in game two. He still had some good plays. He had good stretches, but ultimately, like we've always talked about, the Hawks go as far as Trae Young goes. Let's see if he can take this team and carry him through the round. I think it's possible. Like you said, I think we're both picking the Sixers, but I don't want anyone to think that we're low on this team. If you've listened to this before, you very much know how we feel about this team. I think we're both just trying to be very responsible here with our picks.
And you know I don't like to do that.
No, I know. And it's killing you. I can tell.
It's killing me. I want to just flip it and say Hawks and 6. We got this. Like we're coming and kicking their ass. But I mean, you think about having to win 3-0 at home. As much as home court advantage is, that's still a tall task against a very good team like Philadelphia. And I think that's what they're going to have to do. But like you said, I mean, when you have a guy like Trae Young, you always have a chance. We've said that a million times on this podcast. Definitely. And it's definitely true. He's got to figure out how to, get around the adjustments that Philly threw in him game two. I think he'll come out and have a big game three. And if he has a big game three, lights it up for 30 and 10 again.
Absolutely.
That'll definitely give this team some confidence. And who knows after that. But yeah, you're right. It's going to come down to Trae Young. We can't, there's really no other way to put it. I mean, the supporting cast, there's enough pieces on the supporting cast where they'll get enough points from somewhere. But at the end of the day, Trae Young, we need him to score 30 and have 10 assists every game to win these games. And he's capable of it, but it's also his first postseason performance. We've gotten spoiled where we're just like expecting him to get 30 and 10 and 30 and 15 every
game winners, right?
Yeah, that's not really normal. But he's not a normal player, and if he's able to do it, we'll advance. If not, it was a great run, and we got a lot to think about this offseason. And hey, listen, Hawks basketball is back, regardless of what happens. Hawks basketball is back, and it's back like it's never been before. And we got a lot of great years ahead of us. So nothing to hang our heads about. Have
fun at the game, man. That's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. So that wraps it up. Let's go Hawks. Hopefully we're back here talking about it in a week from now and just talking about a series victory.
Talking about Brooklyn, baby.
Yeah, let's do it.